Yeah, on the 9 through 20, there were some where it was like, okay, I got this, and there was some where it was like, what is that asking? I don't even know. All right. Now, I kind of mentioned this way back when we were studying absolute value, so you might have forgotten. But whenever they said function, whenever they said the function, I told you they actually meant something specific. What did they mean? Y. They meant the y coordinate. So let's cross this out, and let's replace it with y. So where is y negative? If you can't answer the question, can you at least describe it for me in the picture? Yeah, underneath the x-axis, just a little bit underneath the x-axis, so it's like right here. I can't quite write the answer yet, but I know that green does not show up very well. Can you kind of see the green? Oh, it's right here. It's right there. Bloop, just a little bit of green right there. I should have used a different color. Too late now. All right. Okay, we're going to come back to that question in a minute. The next question says, what are the zeros of the function? Does anybody know another word for zeros of the function? Yes. X-intercepts. Okay. I will repeat myself a lot because some of this stuff, it's like the first time I say it, it doesn't really get in your brain. And then by the time I say it for the 27th time, at some point you'll have an epiphany. And it'll be like, Miss Rice has literally said that 27 times. But the 27th time will be magic. You know, at some point, they'll be like, aha! Aha! That's what we're going for. Okay. So zeros are the x-intercepts. So we've got an x-intercept right here and an x-intercept right here. And this is where the calculator comes in because those are definitely decimals. And you can't just tell by looking at it. So we need to type these in. So 2x minus 3 squared. I don't hear any clicking. I should hear clicking because you're typing. Oh, yes, you're typing. Miss Rice, I thought you were my calculator. Nope, I'm not. As soon as I get the answer, I'm going to take this off the screen so you can't see my answer. So I'm typing this in. I'm going to make sure my window is normal. Nice normal window there. I'm going to hit graph. Make sure my picture looks the same as the graph. Yep, that's about the same. What does my first x-intercept look like it is between? Where am I going to look? Between 2 and 3. Okay, so I'm going to hit what to get the x-intercept? Second trace. Number 2, zeros. Haha. There it goes. Zeros of the graph. Did you hear that, Keld? Zeros? Zeros of the graph? Yeah. Number 2. We are looking between 2 and 3. So what should I type for left bound? 2. So just type a 2. Press enter. What should I type for right bound? 3. And then press enter. Is the guess a good guess? Nope, it's dumb. I wish the calculator wouldn't even do that. I wish it would just ignore that part. All right, so 1, 0 of the graph is 2.293. So I'm going to write it here, but I'm also going to label it in the picture. You'll see why in a second. So right here, this is 2.293. I'm going to write it really small. If your calculator is not working, the best thing you should do, what I would do is I would second plus 712. Uh-huh. Did you use this negative somewhere? This negative down here? Don't use this negative. You have to use this negative over here. Okay. All right, and then where is the other x-intercept? It's between 3 and 4. So for left bound, I'm going to type 3. For right bound, I'm going to type 4. I'm going to ignore the guess. 3.707. Okay, so at this point, we know that the zeros of the graph, 2.293, 3.707, I can see my green is in between those numbers. So at this point, we can go back and answer number 9. How should I answer number 9? Where is the function negative? It's yes.
Is it like that number? There's just negative 2, like.
So the y-coordinate is 0 here. Not infinity. Yeah, it's between these two x values, right? So we're going to do x coordinates. That's the y value, right? So we know the y value is negative, so we're not going to use y values as our descriptors. We're going to use x values as our descriptors because we already know what's happening with the y. The y is negative. So for the x values, we're not going to include this x value because the x value at the x-intercept is not negative, it's 0. 0 is not considered a negative number, it's like a neutral. So we're going to say all the numbers that are in between here, this is where the y-coordinates are negative. Would you guys agree with that? These are where the y-coordinates are negative. So I'm going to say all the x values between 2.293 and 3.707, all the x values between here, those outputs are going to be negative. Would that make sense? That's where my graph was dipping below the x-axis. So I'm going to say on the interval between 2.293 to 3.707, I'm going to use parentheses because I'm not including the numbers because the numbers are 0 there, which is not negative. So parentheses, not brackets. Yes? I would know to use x coordinates because they ask the question where. This is actually a really good question, Hannah. They ask the question where, and when you're answering the question where, you're always using x values. And when they say the function, they mean y value. So if I'm answering something about a y value, the x value needs to be the answer. That was a very good question. All right, the next one says, where is f of x? What's another word for f of x, or what are they meaning when they say f of x? They mean y, so let's scribble that out and put y. So they said where, so again, our answer is going to be an x. Where is y greater than or equal to 0? Well, we know it equals 0 at 2.293, so that's going to be part of our answer. Okay? Where is the y value greater than 0? That means positive. Where is the y value positive? Above, right? So I'm going to do it in, I think orange will show up on the screen. So here, this is an example. Does that show up pretty well? Yeah, that's good. Okay. This is an example of where the y value is positive, right? So this is above x-axis and including x-intercepts because it says equal to 0. Equal to 0 includes the x-intercepts. So if I want to write this part right here, how do I include this left arrow? Negative infinity. So from negative infinity all the way to this x-intercept. What was this x-intercept? 2.29. And if I'm going to include that x-intercept, what should I put? Bracket. Okay? Now, anytime I have more than one answer, because I'm not done yet, right? There's another piece that's above the x-axis. Anytime I have more than one answer, I put a U between them. The U means union. It means that I can't just put one answer or another. I need both of them at the same time to be completely accurate. That's what that means. So what would the other answer be? Yep. So, and the decimals were a little bit more specific than 3.5. It was 3.707. If you don't put the U, I'm not going to mark you down. But the U really should be there to be accurate. Yeah. Yes. because that would be like in this missing the equal to, or not, or putting a dotted line instead of a solid line, or not shading. Does that make sense? How that's like really a different thing that you're talking about? Yeah. What was your question, Wade? You're good? Okay. Now, the other question, number 12, you probably could have answered last night, right? That's like the out of the section. You probably could have answered that one because the vocabulary should have been more comfortable. So we got our stick figure. He's right here. We say, oh, this is negative infinity, this is positive infinity. I know that increasing and decreasing is always based off of the x value. The x value right in the middle is 3. He's walking downhill first, then he hits the 3, then he's walking uphill. They're asking, what is the increasing interval? So what should your answer be if these are all your labels? What is your answer for increasing interval? Yes. 3 to infinity, and what do we put around that? Parentheses, always, no brackets, we're not killing any baby raccoons today. Because if you have a trash panda, the baby ones are the cutest. Unless you've watched TikTok. Anyone seen all the pet raccoons on TikTok? Is nobody on that side of TikTok? There are so many pet raccoons on TikTok, and I don't know if it's because I see so many cats on TikTok, and so that like the raccoons get thrown in there a lot. Maybe. Is it just me? It's just me. We're gonna move on. Awkward. All right. Next one. Okay, so they did the same thing again. Positive, zeros, negative. So we're going to work our way through this. We're going to find the zeros first because we kind of need that information. They almost look like -4 and 4, but they're just like decimals that are not quite there. They're a little bit off of -4 and 4. So we are going to have to graph this to see what the decimals are. So I'm not going to tell you the decimals. I want you to type it in your calculator and figure out what those decimals should be. I should hear lots of clicking, as every individual student in this room does it themselves. Keld included. Keld, are you doing it? Click, 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 click. Click, 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 click. You can trade me your watch. You cannot trade me a $20 bill. You can trade me a $100 bill. Oh, sorry. Ooh. Fancy schmancy. And I got a fancy schmancy watch. What? What? All right. Don't copy me, you cheater. I see you looking at my paper. Yeah, it's not quite. It's close, but it's not quite there. It's a decimal.
Because I put like, isn't it negative? It's like near -4, so we put negative.
So, if you're having a hard time, if you're getting too close to these, I would just do left bound is -10, right bound is 0. You don't even have to be specific.
But
It'll take longer to find it, but it'll still find it. You don't have to be super close. You just gotta say it's in between these two numbers.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was like the closest number.
No.
I didn't even put the left.
Nope. You could be pretty far away. Yeah, so for the left one, if you want to do between -10, like between -10 and 0, and for the right one, you want to do between 0 and 10, you could do that. It's just the further, it'll go faster if you pick numbers that are closer together. If you pick numbers that are further apart, then it waits, it like takes some time to calculate it, so. But the numbers you put in have to be within the window that you have. So you can't do like -100 right now because our window's not that big. So you can do it if you want to change if you really want to test the theory, take your window, make it go from -100 to 100. So it looks like this. And then you can test your theory that way. Yeah. All right, are we getting the x-intercepts on our own? We can find those. It is very important that we are able to do that. Miss Rice, why? Is it on the test on Monday? I don't know. Could I be making you find your own x-intercepts? Maybe. All right, -3.873. Is that what you guys got? All right. Okay. Let's answer question 13. Where is the function positive? Yes. Yeah, the guess is always bad. Your left bound and right bound might not have been good. Like so when it says error, sometimes it's a user error. That's you. You're the user. Yeah. All right, where is the function positive? Yeah, it's this little like mountaintop part here, the up part. So when it says the function, it's talking about y. Joseph, was it a user error? Yeah. Uh-huh. Like your third decimal is wrong? Do you have a typo somewhere? Yeah, don't do 0.33, don't do decimals, do fractions. Yeah, don't do decimals, do fractions, because a rounded fraction in the front would make your answer wrong. Yeah. You don't have to use the fraction button. You can literally type -1 divided by 3, and then type x squared. Yeah. All right. So where's the function positive? So we have from -3.873 to 3.873. Brackets or parentheses? So Keld is a little bit unsure. Anyone want to support? Parentheses. Anybody else? What do we think? Parentheses. Okay, why? Yeah, it doesn't say anything about including 0. Just says positive numbers. 0 is kind of a neutral. 0 is in between positive and negative. And so there's no reason to put a bracket. There's no reason to include 0. Okay. All right, the next one, 15. Where is f of x less than 0? What is f of x? Y. Okay. Where is y less than 0? All right. Anyone have any ideas? Okay. Brackets, parentheses, what should we put around it? Wait. Do we put a bracket there? Look at the question. Parentheses, because this time it didn't equal 0. Ooh, I switched it from the last set of questions. So parenthesis on both. And then I got a U because I'm going to have 2 answers. And then what's my other answer? Perfect. And end behavior, I know, is our favorite thing to do. So how do we describe our arrows? Mm-hmm. Are you sure? Negative infinity. Yep, both going down. Perfect. All right. Now for the last one. When it says, where does f of x equal g of x, what are we even trying to describe there? Anyone know? Yeah, where do they cross? Where do they connect with each other? Okay, now this one, it looks like it's a whole number, and it is. So you can tell this without graphing it on your calculator. Can you guys tell? And this is a where question. So you could, if you wanted to answer these with coordinates like an x and a y coordinate, you could. But based on the way the question is phrased, you only need the x value. So what x values do you see where the two graphs are crossing each other? 3 and 1. Okay. X equals 1, x equals 3. Okay? You don't need the y coordinate. And that is something, if you put the y coordinate, you're not wrong. You're just being more specific. That's fine. Okay? I would not count it wrong if you put the y coordinate. Nope. It's kind of like if you said, hey, what's that guy's name? And somebody said the first name or somebody said the first and last name. Both ways you're answering the question. One person's just being more specific. Yeah. All right, now it says, where is f of x greater than g of x? Now, those are both different ways of saying y coordinates, okay? So here they're saying the y coordinate of the function f of x. Here they're saying the y coordinate of the function of g of x. Does that make sense? So they're saying, where are the y values of one function bigger than the y values of the other function? And for us, we can tell where y values are bigger when they are higher up on the graph. Does that make sense? Okay, so which graph is f of x? Is it the darker one or the lighter one? The darker, okay. So we want to answer the question, when is the darker graph visibly above the lighter graph? When is it visibly above the lighter graph? So it's over here. You can see the darker graph is above the lighter graph. Can you guys see that? Okay, so I'm going to do that in yellow so we can see that that's part of it. So right here, this one is above right here. And then the darker graph is below the lighter graph for a little bit, so it's not greater for that little portion. Okay, so right here, this f of x is greater than g of x for that little portion. Then they are equivalent to each other. Then for this little section, g of x is greater, and then they are equivalent to each other, and then f of x is greater again. You guys see that? And I could tell that the y coordinate was greater because it was just physically higher up. The y coordinates are higher on the graph, which means they are bigger. They're more positive. F of x just means y coordinates, g of x just means y coordinates, so we're comparing the y coordinates for one graph with the y coordinates for the other graph.
In my head, I was thinking -1 because the x like the lowest is -1, or not the lowest, the highest it goes to -1.
So you're saying for whatever specific x value, what is at that moment? So like here we're saying at x equals 1, both of their y coordinates is -3, so neither one of them is bigger at that point. Then when g is an x coordinate of 0, the f is -4, the g is like -9 or something. So f wins because it's bigger. Then for an x value of -1, the f value is up here at -1. It looks like the g value would be like -15 or something. Does that make sense? It's all the way down here. So all these x values, the f has higher numbers. The g has numbers down here, which means that the f is always winning because it's always higher. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so how do we write these answers? We have to write this yellow one as an answer. So we're answering where, so we're saying x values. So we have to say these x values, we have to say these x values. So how do we answer that? -infinity to 1. Okay, we have to think about, should we have brackets or parentheses? Parentheses, why? There's a specific answer, but it doesn't have to do with continuing. It's on the page. Say it louder. It's the greater sign. See that? What's missing from the greater sign? It does not say equal to, that's why it's a parenthesis, not a bracket. Does that make sense? Because at this moment, at x equals 1, they equal each other. One's not bigger than the other, they are equal to each other at that moment. That's why we put a parenthesis. because we're not going to include that value. That's where they equal. Okay, how do we describe this other one right here? 3 to infinity. Parentheses or bracket? Parentheses. What do I put in between them? U. All right. You should. Am I going to mark you down if you don't know? It means union. It means you have to have both answers to be right. No. Math people are kind of pretentious. They like specific notation. That's kind of like this, where you're like, Miss Rice, can't I just say the left arrow goes up and it goes, yeah, left arrow goes up, right arrow goes up? And no, you have to write it like this because math people like their notation. That notation, it's almost like, you know how there's like certain ways of saying things in certain languages? It's like the math language accepted way of saying something. So that if you were to get very deep in mathematics and you tried to say it a different way, they'd be like, what are you saying? Nobody would say it like that. So those of us who maybe not a trendsetter so much as just like you'd come across as being naive. It'd be like you don't know what you're doing. So nobody would take you seriously. If that makes sense. It'd be just like if you were like saying that you were fluent in a language, but you were mispronouncing something because you didn't like how it was said. You're like, I'm being a trendsetter. I don't like how that's said. I can't pronounce it. I'm not good at rolling my R's, so I'm going to do Spanish without rolling my R's ever. And they'd be like, well, you just can't speak Spanish right if you can't roll your R's, you know? And so then you're not a trendsetter. You're just doing it wrong. Does that make sense? That's kind of the idea of it. All right. When it says where are both functions increasing, we just want to see where both functions are slanting up to the right at the same time. Okay, so can you tell on the graph where both functions are going up to the right at the same time? Yeah, between 1 and 3. Can you guys see it? Between 1 and 3? Both functions are going up to the right at the same time between 1 and 3. So I'll show you on the graph. Let me do orange for this. So between 1 and 3, you can see g of x is increasing. Between 1 and 3, f of x is increasing. So there's your increasing for both. Now g of x is increasing over here, but f of x is not. F of x is increasing over here, but g of x is not. So this little section right here is the only place both of them are slanting up to the right at the same time. Yes, ma'am?
Are we going to be allowed, like, coloring?
Absolutely. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you want to get colors out because color coding things helps you, that's totally fine. So both functions are increasing from 1 to 3. Parentheses or brackets? Parentheses. Now, yeah, parentheses. Yep, parentheses. All right, next one. If g of x was shifted to the left 1, what would its new equation be? Joseph. Okay, hold on. I'm going to show you something. X minus 4 squared is right here. Did you shift it to the left 1? X minus 4 squared is right there. Right? Did you shift it to the left 1? You shifted it to the right 1. Oh no. Okay, so how do we shift it to the left 1? You should add 1 inside the parentheses. It's so basically it reminds us it's the opposite of what you would think. So you'd think you should subtract 1 inside, but you should actually add 1 inside because it's the opposite of what you would think. So x minus 2 squared. Ta-da. Joseph, it's okay, it hurt my brain too. Yeah. So, I mean, your homework is always about effort, not accuracy. And this is learning, so the nice thing, maybe not the nice thing, is that I put more questions like this on your test review, since this was probably not the easiest thing. so that we'd kind of learn and go through like the growing pains on this, and then on the test review, you guys could try some of these again, but without me telling you how to do every single one. No, I might put one question like this. So the way these are going to work, because the reason I started putting stuff on this, these questions are what we call like conceptual questions, where it's like, do you really understand vocabulary? Do you understand what things mean? Can you interpret pictures? Does that make sense? As opposed to like, this is a skill that's being taught. This is like, do you understand things? It's not necessarily a skill. So I'm introducing this stuff to you guys, but when I do stuff like this, I don't like to put it on a test right away. I like to put it on assignments first, and then eventually it will end up on a test. Does that make sense? It was the same thing with the characteristics. Did you guys notice we did a lot of characteristics before the quiz, but there wasn't very much on the quiz? I wanted to like get you guys into it a bit and have you guys see it a lot. And even though we're going to do it a ton this year, I didn't want to test you on it a lot until we had done it a bit, because I know it's a bit overwhelming for your brain at first. So we'll see this more and more, and then eventually it will show up on tests more, but for now I just want to introduce it to you guys and get you guys more comfortable with it so you can start to recognize things, and then it will start showing up on tests more. Yeah. All right. You have the test reviews in front of you. Go ahead and work on those. I'm working on the answer key. The first 2 pages are up. I'm going to keep working on pages and getting more of them up so you can check answers.